Hello students, we are happy to have another session of history. We've been going on with our topic where we are asking why did the event in the Gulf matter between 1970 to 2000. And last lesson we were looking at the revolution in Iran, and we were asking ourselves why were people not comfortable with the Shah leadership. And I highlighted several issues that made Iranians not to like the dynasty leadership, and they wanted the Islamic leadership to come back into norm. Now today I want to go on with our topic at the revolution in Iran, and we'll be looking at the dissatisfaction with the Shah modernization program, why people they were not happy with the modernization program that Shah came up with. So you find when you are a leader, you always come with an agenda. For example, in our country we have the agenda, the 4 agendas that the government wants to implement. So when Shah came into power, he was yearning to bring modernization in that country. But we are asking ourselves, why were people not satisfied with that modernization? Nobody hates development. But why are people not happy with this development that Shah is coming up with? To start with, I want to look at the areas that he was aiming at modernizing, and one of the sectors that he was willing to do it in the modern way, or to bring it to the modern way, was the transport network. Another area was industry, education system, and all this began in the 1920s, and the previous leader was known as Reza Khan. So Shah Mohammad Reza continued with this plan and launched what became to be known the White Revolution after 1963. And why are people nicknaming it, putting it into quotation, White Revolution? It's because it favored some few, and the majority they continued suffering as if they were under the colonialism, or as if they were slaves in their own country. So the main feature of this program were the land reforms, industrial expansion, and health and education reform. So yet you find this revolution, or these changes that were done, they were reforms that the people did not like them. And very soon they were regarded as inadequate or simply backfire program. Why are they calling them backfire program? Because you find majority did not enjoy. And we are going to find that the land reform, for example, was designed in a way that to modernize Iran rural area by redistributing land among us the peasants. So these peasants, are they really going to have land which they will be able to cultivate their home crops and be able to get surplus that they can be able to take to the market and get the goods? You find that one will be, on the other, it will be negative, whereby people, they will be given land, but that land will be only enough for their own food, and therefore, can you say that there is any reform? There isn't, because people, they want reforms that are benefiting them, or that are bringing development among those peasants. So you find that, in fact, most of the peasants, they ended up withholding only just sufficient to support their families, and so we were no better off than the landless laborers. It's even better to be a landless, other than just to be saying, I have land, but that land is not able to support me economically. So most of the village still lack the piped water, they lack the electricity, they lack the road, and other basic services. And therefore we can say that these are the main thing. If they were to bring reforms in those lands, they needed to have done these changes whereby people, or the local people, could be able to access water, electricity, road, and other basic services. But this did not happen. The only thing they were done, they were given pieces of land that they could not even maximize the utility of that land because they did not have the basic services. So although the health reforms increased the number of doctors, nurses, and hospital beds, as late as the mid-1970s, Iran still had one of the worst infant mortality rates. That means most of the children, they were dying before they could reach the maturity age, because the ratio between doctor-patient was the opposite, whereby you find a doctor is attending so many patients, and therefore it was a problem, and that's why we find the infant mortality rate increased as days were going on. So similarly, the expansion of education also failed to make significant reduction in the high level of adult illiteracy. All alter the low proportion of the population in higher education. Why? You find the services of education, or most of the schools, they were built in the urban center, and the majority were in the rural area, and therefore you find illiterate continued developing in that country, or continued increasing in that country, despite the fact that they wanted to eradicate illiteracy. They were not able to do it because the schools were in towns where the rich had occupied, but in the rural area they did not bring any plan to ensure that those children, they were able to go to school. And apart from that, the education cost was very high, such that most of these peasants were not able to meet it, and therefore they continued with their programs, or the home program, where most of the children were not able to go to schools. So by the late 1970s, the distribution of income in Iran was more unequal than it had been in the 20 years earlier, whereby the richest, who only occupied 10%, were accounting for that 7.9% of their expenditure, compared to the 1.3% for the poorest 10%. So you find it was the other way around. The rich continued becoming more richer, while the poor continued becoming more poorer. And therefore, when you say there are reforms, and me as an individual, I'm not even able to meet my daily bread because the government budget is not catering for me, what do you expect? You expect people to be comfortable? No, at one point people will burst and they will break out, and therefore a revolution was inevitable. So this inequality was particularly obvious and visible in Tehran, where the rich lived in luxurious palaces, while the poor were housed in shanty town hovels without proper roads or facilities. Now look at this difference. Somebody is living in a palace, while somebody else is living in the ghetto or those Soweto, and these bring about whereby you find the rich, they were continuing enjoying themselves, while the poor continued suffering. So a member of the royal family was rumored to have questioned why, if people did not like being stuck in the traffic jam, they didn't buy a helicopter. Can you imagine such a sarcasm, whereby me as a poor person who cannot even be able to buy food, I'm complaining because of the traffic jam, because the matatos or the buses I'm using, they are not conducive. Yet a rich person is asking, why don't I buy a helicopter? Are you saying that? A poor person being asked, why don't you buy a helicopter? That's an abuse. And because the reason why they could utter such a word is because they were comfortable, they didn't know or they did not understand the term we call poverty. So the insensitivity of the ruling regime was also underlined by instances of conspicuous corruption, such as Shah's multi-million-dollar coronations held in 1967 October, and the Shah monument constructed to remind everyone of the achievement of the modern Iran under the Pahlavi dynasty. Now look at this. People, they are so insensitive. The leader or the monarchy is going ahead of using multi-billion dollars in coronation. And he invites guests to come and enjoy it, and they are eating government money. While a poor person who is just complaining of traffic, electricity cannot afford, and another person is really talking ill about that. You find constructing a monument. You have seen those monuments which are stationed in the town. Do they really bring any food to their table? But the Shah monument was constructed using millions and millions of money just to remind the people the achievement of modern Iran. Was it important at that time? So those are the questions that the local people, they'll start asking, are we really going to the right direction, or we need to change? And you find those opposed to the Shah rule compare the scale of urban poverty and unemployment with the funds some have spent on the military expansion. Why is he expanding the military base while the poor people in the urban center cannot even be able to afford a meal a day? So people, they oppose the Shah rule, knowing that he was not for the poor, but he only looked at how I can continue benefiting with this country. And we are told by 1975, Iran had the largest navy in the Persian Gulf, the largest air force in the Western Asia, and the 5th largest army in the whole world. Look at that. But where is the common citizen? Are they able to eat? Are they able to go to work normally? Are they able to get what they are supposed to be paid? So all these, they catalyzed the people willing to remove that government. And therefore, in our next episode, we are going to see why people continued hating Shah more and more as he was continuing with the leadership. Let's meet in our next clip.